Welcome to Case Closed. I'm James Braden, and I'm Sheraton Melick, and we're thrilled you've joined us for another deep dive into a captivating court case. Today, we're venturing into the heart of Kenyan politics, with a case that sent shockwaves through the nation back in October 2024, the impeachment of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. It was a first in Kenya's history.
Unprecedented, really.
We've pored over court documents, analyzed political commentary, even delved into public opinion surveys, to really understand what went down and what it means for Kenya's future.
This case is a prime example of how Kenya's 2010 constitution, which, by the way, introduced the impeachment process, was put to the test for the very first time. It's not just about political maneuvering. We're talking potential criminal charges, too.
Right, and it all unfolded in the public eye, with accusations and defenses playing out on a national stage. So let's set the scene for our listeners. It's October 2024, and MP Mwengi Mutio throws a curveball, a motion to impeach Gachagua.
And this wasn't just a quiet suggestion. 11 charges were leveled against Gachagua. Some pretty serious stuff. We're talking gross violation of the Constitution, corruption, abuse of office, even exploiting ethnic tensions for political gain.
11 charges, that's a lot to process.
Yeah.
Were there any that really grabbed the public's attention?
Oh, absolutely. The accusations that really seemed to hit a nerve were those tied to Gachagua's alleged wealth and possible misuse of government funds. There were claims of a fortune exceeding 5.2 billion Kenyan shillings.
Wow.
Accusations of using proxies to snap up government property and manipulating tenders to benefit family and friends.
So it wasn't just a political power struggle, but accusations of serious financial misconduct. Was there any truth to these claims?
Well, during the parliamentary proceedings, a substantial amount of evidence was presented. Financial records, witness testimonies, even reports from investigative agencies.
Okay, so there was something to back up these accusations. How did Gachagua's team respond to all of this?
He had a top-notch legal team, senior counsel Paul Mute and lawyer Ndegwa Nyuru. They fought tooth and nail for him, arguing that the charges were purely political, a way to sideline Gachagua and damage his political standing.
Classic he said, she said. How did the public react to all this?
Public opinion was completely split down the middle. Some were outraged by the allegations and saw the impeachment as a crucial step towards accountability. Others viewed it as a politically motivated witch hunt.
It sounds like this was a battle for hearts and minds, as much as a legal battle. So what happened next? The impeachment motion went to a vote in Parliament, right?
Exactly, and the vote in the National Assembly was pretty decisive. Out of 349 MPs, a staggering 282 voted in favor of impeachment.
Wow, 282 votes. That's a clear message. So with the National Assembly giving it the green light, the case moved to the Senate for the final verdict.
Yeah, and that's where things got even more dramatic. The Senate needed a 2/3 majority to uphold the impeachment.
So the pressure was really on. What were some of the...
Well, there are a few things that really caught the public's attention. Like when Gachagua was hospitalized for chest pains during the proceedings.
Oh yeah, I remember reading about that. Did they pause the hearings?
Surprisingly, no. The Senate rejected a motion to adjourn and continued with the proceedings.
No, they weren't messing around. Did that affect Gachagua's defense at all?
His legal team argued that it was unfair to proceed without him and that it prejudiced the case. But the Senate went ahead with witness testimonies and presentation of evidence.
It sounds like things were getting pretty intense. So did they eventually reach a verdict?
They did, and the verdict was guilty.
Guilty on all charges.
Not all of them. The Senate voted to impeach Gachagua on 5 out of the 11 charges, meeting that 2/3 majority.
5 out of 11. So some pretty serious accusations didn't stick. What were the charges they upheld?
The ones related to gross violation of the Constitution, specifically abuse of power and undermining the presidency, but those alleging specific crimes like corruption, money laundering, bullying public officers, those didn't get enough votes.
So he was removed from office, but not technically convicted of any crimes.
That's right. The impeachment doesn't prevent separate criminal proceedings.
Interesting. So his legal troubles might not be over, but let's stick with the immediate aftermath of the impeachment.
Okay.
Was there a smooth transition of power?
Well, remember that TIFA survey we mentioned?
The one showing the public was divided on the impeachment.
Right. It also highlighted who the public favored as Gachagua's replacement.
Oh, right. You mentioned Kithure Kindiki, the Interior Cabinet Secretary at the time.
Exactly. The survey showed a majority of Kenyans wanted him as the new deputy president.
So did he step right in?
Well, the High Court had to lift an order that was preventing his swearing in.
Oh, right. I remember reading about that. So once that was done, Kindiki was able to assume the role.
Yeah, there was a bit of a delay and some political maneuvering, but Kindiki was eventually sworn in.
A new chapter in Kenyan politics begins.
What?
What about the broader implications of all this? What does Gachagua's impeachment tell us about Kenyan democracy?
It really exposes the challenges of balancing political power with legal accountability, especially in a young democracy like Kenya.
Do you think this whole process strengthened or weakened democratic institutions in Kenya?
That's a tough one. On one hand, it shows that no one is above the law. Even the second highest official can be held accountable.
That's true. Seeing the system work, even at that level, could bolster faith in the judiciary and the rule of law.
Exactly. But on the other hand, the fact that many saw the impeachment as politically motivated raises concerns about the potential for abuse and the politicization of justice.
So it's a double-edged sword. It demonstrated the strengths,
Yeah.
but also the vulnerabilities of Kenya's democracy. What about the long-term effects? What are some key takeaways from this whole saga?
I'd say one maybe takeaway is the increased awareness and discussion around corruption and governance. This case pushed these issues into the spotlight.
Forcing people to confront some uncomfortable truths.
Exactly.
Do you think that will lead to any real change?
It's hard to say for sure, but there's definitely momentum for change. We saw a surge in citizen activism, calls for stronger anti-corruption measures, and demands for greater transparency.
So the impeachment might have been just one event, but it's part of a much bigger story about Kenya's path towards a more just society. Before we wrap up this deep dive, there's one more piece of the puzzle I want to explore. You mentioned earlier that some people saw the impeachment as an inside job. What do they mean by that?
Right, let's break that down. Well, the idea is that the impeachment wasn't just about holding Gachagua accountable. It was a calculated move by political rivals to weaken him and maybe even push him out of the picture completely.
I see. Gachagua still had a lot of support even after the impeachment.
Yeah.
You mentioned that 69% of people in his Met Kenya stronghold opposed it.
Exactly. His supporters saw it as a political hit job.
It definitely adds another layer to this whole story. Makes you wonder about the real motives behind the impeachment. Was it about justice and accountability? Or was it just a power grab?
That's the question a lot of Kenyans are still asking. Did the impeachment serve the interests of justice or the interests of those in power?
It's a blurry line between politics and justice. This case really shows how legal processes can be influenced by political agendas.
Absolutely. And that raises serious questions about the integrity of institutions. Can people trust that justice is being served fairly? Or is it just a tool for those in power?
If people lose faith in the system, it can have a ripple effect across society.
For sure. That's why this inside job narrative is so powerful. Even if you believe the evidence against Gachagua was solid, the perception of political maneuvering undermines trust in the government.
So where does all this leave Kenyan politics? Will this experience lead to more transparency and accountability? Or will it just create more distrust and division?
It's hard to say for sure, but this case has definitely left its mark. It's sparked conversations about corruption, about good governance, and about the need for a more just and equal society.
It also shows how important it is for citizens to hold their leaders accountable.
Yeah. This wasn't just about politicians and lawyers. It was about everyday Kenyans demanding a better future.
Well said. The impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua was a turning point for Kenya. It's a story full of twists and turns and unanswered questions.
Definitely.
But ultimately, it's a story about the ongoing struggle for a fairer and more democratic society.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
That brings us to the end of our deep dive. We hope you found it insightful
and thought-provoking.
We encourage you to keep exploring these issues, read different perspectives, and form your own conclusions.
It's an important conversation to have.
Thanks for joining us on Case Closed.